Hey guys, and welcome to the Money Podcast. This episode, we're talking about exactly how to get what you want out of life. Too often we think about money as an end. We know we need more of it, but we're not sure exactly why. We don't even consider how it can make our lives better. So today, we're going to talk about how to figure out your financial priorities so you can adjust your relationship with money and design a life you're excited about living. I'm your host, Stacey Johnson. As usual, my co-host will be financial journalist Miranda Marquette. Hello, Miranda.
Hello. I'm super excited. I love this topic.
Me too. Listening in and sometimes contributing is our producer and novice investor, Aaron Freeman. Hey, Aaron.
Hello, everybody. How you guys doing?
And today, we are honored to have a special guest, Michelle Jackson, a financial writer and podcaster specializing in facilitating impactful conversations about money. Hi, Michelle.
Hi. By the way, are those Emmys behind you?
Those are Emmys behind me. Oh, those things? I didn't even know they were there.
Those old things.
I got distracted. I'm going to bring my A game now. Oh
you better bring your... And by the way, I don't even understand your introduction. You're facilitating impactful conversations about money. I got lost. I lost the thread. We're going to find out. We're going to get this ball rolling, folks. But first, a quick disclaimer. Should we discuss specific investments in this show, do not take them as recommendations. Why? Because they're not. Before you invest in anything, you've got to do your own research. You've got to make your own decisions. Okay, before we begin, Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself, your relationship with money, and how it's evolved.
Whoa.
You weren't prepared for that, huh?
I kind of was, but still, like, when you verbally say it, it's like that's a lot. So my name is Michelle Jackson. I am in the personal finance space. I do like to say that I am not a professional. I am not an expert in my view when it comes to money. I feel like my relationship with money and learning about it is ever evolving and ever changing. I don't have credentials about money related things behind my name. I have credentials for other things. I love to have conversations about money and why I even got into this was because I had a lot of very negative, impactful situations that influenced my finances for a very, very long time. And so I unfortunately that those influences, those experiences still influence my money now. I run a website and podcast called Michelle is Money Hungry. It's an award-winning, not an Emmy award-winning show, maybe one day, but it's an award-winning podcast and website where I talk about all things money. And my goal is really to approach personal finance in a much more entertaining and impactful way, leading with empathy and, just a lack of judgment. Right now, we're having a conversation out in the world about student loan forgiveness. And it's been really interesting to me to see how people are reacting to the possibility of this happening. Obviously, this isn't the show for that conversation, but I'm putting together a series of content around that conversation because I feel like there are people that I want to hear from about this in a different way than like these quick takes where we're, these hot takes where no, yes,
Yeah.
So I love talking about money. I was going to get an economics degree back in the day. And people made fun of me in college, and they're like, "They're only old white dudes getting economics degrees."
I have an economics degree. No, I don't. I have an accounting degree, which is basically the same thing.
It's the same thing. And so I looked around the program, like the courses. I was like in prereqs, and I was like, "Oh my God, they're right." And I felt really weird about it. And then I went and got a poli-sci degree, and I had this idea that I would go into politics or I would become, like, my dream job was to become Secretary of State, actually.
Which state? Of the United States.
Oh, yeah, of the United States. And I wanted to be like a Madeleine Albright kind of person.
Except alive.
Without the pen. Well, not dead, but without the pens. And I wanted to really have a global impact. And ironically, I talk about money, even though I ended up not doing that thing. And I talk a lot about policy, which my master's is in public administration with the emphasis on nonprofit organization management. So how I'm doing it is very different. but it's still using the skills that I and content and just focus that I care about. So it's weird how that's worked out.
Actually, Michelle, that's a great transition to what I assumed this was going to be about. Sometimes we don't know what we're going to be talking about. This may be one of those times. But getting what you want out of life. Is that an appropriate title for what we're going to talk about today?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is it?
Well, that's what I assumed this was going to be about.
Yes,
because
it's
Miranda
talking.
doesn't tell me anything.
Whatever. I gave you this outline 2 weeks ago. Everybody had this outline 2 weeks ago.
You can't just give me something, Miranda. You have to show it to me. You have to read it to me.
Oh my God.
But anyways,
Everybody had this outline 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
so much
fine.
has happened. It's been a lifetime ago. Oh my God.
But no, really, it's we talk, right? I mean, money. A lot of the time we say like, "Oh, money can't buy happiness," but
yes, it can. But people
exactly. but
I'm sick of hearing that. But there's ways around it.
yeah, but I mean,
So,
right?
okay,
like
well, you take over, Miranda. Then you lead us in this discussion because I obviously am just an old white guy who doesn't know what the hell's going on. So
No, you can
take me
know
where you
what's
want us to
going
go.
no, but seriously though, like, I mean, when we talk about money, we're always like, oh, I need more of it. But nobody says like, why do I need more of it? And how are we reevaluating ourselves? And I think part of what the pandemic did, if you look at the Pew Research Center, they saw that about 1 in 5 Americans, so about 20% of Americans, said the pandemic made them really reevaluate their lives. And then there are a number of people who, when you look at like the reasons they're moving across country, have to do with COVID. And so that really made a lot of people take a step back and say, wait a second, why am I doing all this work for all this money? What is the end game? How do I reevaluate my life? And so Michelle's talked about that as well, like the importance of protecting time and all of that. And so if you could talk to us a little bit about that, Michelle, about like how you've changed your approach to how you make your money, how you manage your money, and how you're protecting time, which is not a renewable resource.
Great question. And I think I'm going to start from the beginning, which is why this even happened. So 1 billion years ago, I lived in France. And I actually, before I lived in France, I did a program called Up With People. And it's an intercultural, it's still alive. It's an intercultural international program where participants travel the world, they volunteer, and they also live with host families.
Michelle, weren't they headquartered in Tucson, Arizona?
Yeah, but they're in Denver now. They're
okay. I went to the University of Arizona and knew people who were in it. That's why I asked.
Anyway, they are definitely, they do the reunions in Arizona, which actually is unfortunate because I boycott Arizona. So I have to also make a decision. No, I have a big reunion this summer, my birthday weekend, and I have to figure out if I'm going to go. Anyway. My point is I did this amazing program where I was traveling the world with 130 adult students and staff. We were adults, so we weren't like children, ranging in ages between, I'd say, 17 to 35 because of the staff. They're 17 to 40. And so in that year-long experience of just having conversations about different parts of the world and what people had access to and how their lives were, I was like, wait a minute. There are a lot of great things about America, but we have issues. And so then after that program, I came back and I was like, you know what? I really want to live abroad for a while. Like, this is an experience that I think would be really impactful for me. And I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to make it work. So I ended up working at Marshall's in Boulder on Marshall's in Boulder on 28th. And I worked there for I'd say 7 or 8 months easily, like as many hours as I possibly could, and saved up the whopping amount of $4,000. And it was about $4,000. And I found a program that was in its inception. It was this first year in France. And so I ended up going to France, going to the Sorbonne, and technically maybe finding work
So
under
it's
the table.
An art program.
No, a language program. I'm not a
language.
artist.
Okay.
So I went to study French. And I literally spent for 6 months $4,000. And it really impacted and influenced my life. Like I lived in France and I saw their pace of life and their quality of life. And I should say I live in Colorado. Like my quality of life is pretty good. And so when I came back, it just always, like, this experience always kind of resonated with me. And then eventually I had, the family problems with money. I ended up going into work life here in the US. And I loved my job. I worked with international students coming to the US to learn English as a second language. These were adults as well. So these were like 17 to 65-year-olds. And we'd have conversations again about their quality of life and their pace of life. And I just got to the point where I was like, something is wrong here with the pace of life. And it was significant to me because I knew that my quality of life in Colorado was just so good in comparison to other places. So I had visited 45 states. I'd had lots of conversations. It wasn't like I had only been here and I had this narrow scope of experience. And so what I learned, the reason why I'm sharing this story is I learned a few things, which is in my work, it was great, but it shouldn't have been my life. Like there's the whole like work to live, live to work. And I just was like, my life is only so long. Like I could live 100 years and that is a significant human life, but that's a blink of an eye. And all of us, I think we're over 20. We can attest to the fact that like life happens. And in my professional job, as much as I loved it, and there came a point where I was just so tired. I was commuting. My commute became a long commute because they were working on the highway. So it would be 2 hours each way. So, and it wasn't just me, like the same people, we'd commute for years together and we would sleep on the bus because we got a free eco pass. So all of us would just get on the bus, fall asleep, and then like wake up at work, right?
So is this like a search for fulfillment we're talking about then?
No, it's how much time do I have in life? Okay. It's like just a basic, it's not fulfillment. It's just how much time do I have to be with myself, with the people that I love, to do the things that I care about, to clean my house, like just on a basic level. And it's not even close. It doesn't even touch fulfillment yet because I didn't even have time to do a thing, to date. So it became a thing where I was like, this sucks. And
well,
so
I think you described life for a lot of people. So
yeah,
what is the solution for this?
So the solution, it's interesting because I think COVID really, like I hit this point in 2014 and 2012 and 2014 when I actually finally quit. And when I quit at like 2012, I was like, this isn't sustainable. And then I stayed 2 more years and I quit in 2014. I literally, when I put in my notice, it was a long notice because I was the only person doing my role and it was an immigration-based role. It was very significant. I bought a ticket to go to Hawaii and then to Australia for 2 months just to decompress. It took me a year to feel physically well, right? And so there are a couple of things I would say about this. One is COVID, I think, has really made people reassess what they feel like is sustainable and what makes sense for them in their lives. In terms of just like time that's spent as output for work. We understand that jobs will let you go. Like the emotion that a lot of us have had around our work, I think finally has been removed, where it's like, be clear about this. It's just a job and your job will replace you if you're not doing the thing they need you to do. Or as my friend Sandy Smith has brought up, she's worked in human resources. They could just look at a budget and they could love you and just be like, you know what? We love you, but we got to eliminate you because your role pays such and such amount. So just having Americans remove the emotion attached to their work output and their job, I think is number one. You can leave because they will leave you. They will drop you like a hot potato, like a bad date, like your job will drop you. once you have that freedom, it changes the kind of choices that you're going to make around.
That makes some sense.
You know, like
what, Michelle, I'm sorry to cut you off. Let me do this.
No
We've
worries.
got to take a really quick break because we got to pay some bills. But we're going to be right back. And then I want to know more about exactly what you think we should be doing differently than what we're doing now.
Okay.
But we'll be right back with this quick message. Do not move a muscle. Okay, we're back. So now, tell me more. Okay, so you've given me one thing, which is Americans shouldn't have an emotional relationship with their job. Your job will leave you. Don't be afraid to leave it. Is that a good way of restating it?
100%.
Okay, so now what next?
So I think that the next thing is if you do not want to work for yourself, because quite frankly, it's a lot of work, up level your job. Like just that simple. Build in a significant raise as you change your job. And when you that one thing alone will change your life. I have someone in my life that has always significantly under-earned throughout their life. And recently they were looking for work. And finally, I was just like, why do you keep putting your name on applications that don't pay you money? Like there was just a really weird disconnect. I'm like, you're putting your name. They kept talking about how they weren't earning enough. And I'm like, but you're putting your name on these applications. And so I finally got this person. I convinced this person to get out of their way and to start applying for jobs making twice the amount that they used to. And they did. And they're so happy. Like they're so freaking happy. That one thing alone, when you're changing jobs, building in a raise is huge. The other thing is just figure out, what do you want your day to look like? Right now is the best time to do that. I think we have another 1.5 to 2 years of roadway around like really being able to aggressively lifestyle design our workday. And if you're working for someone else, they are doing work from home. They're doing flexible schedules. Some people hate work from home. So maybe it's like, hey, can I come in? And I like to come in 6 to 3. And then you have time to be with the kids, or 6 to 2. And then you have time to decompress, go do your thing, and then be with the kids, depending on what your life looks like. So really being clear, if you're in a 9 to 5, on your lifestyle design, right? I work for myself. That's a different conversation around lifestyle design. I'm very aggressive about how my days look so that I'm happy.
So this is really about how to design your lifestyle to suit you.
Right?
Right?
I mean, don't let your life happen to your life. Right. And so I think it's cliche, but people just will be like I said, this person in my life was putting their name all the time on these low paying jobs. And I was like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
And then they would always talk about how they don't get paid enough. And I'm just like, but you're putting your name. So it's like, don't accept that this is the only way to do a thing.
Yeah. You know, Michelle, I've written a couple of books on money. I've written 5 books on money, but when we talk about lifestyle, one of the things that I've said over and over, because I've been doing this for 40 years, is the purpose of life isn't to be rich, it's to be happy.
Exactly.
And so the first thing, that I advise people to do, not the first thing, but a first thing, is to see where you are right now. Just like you would take stock of where your money is if you were doing a budget, take stock of where your life is. If you judge yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, say, or whatever, on health, wealth, love, happiness. In other words, these are the things that determine how the quality of life that you have. And so you have to decide what's important for yourself. And then you need to design make what's happening outside match what you're feeling inside. So once you figure out what it's going to take to make you happy, which is unique for all of us, then all you have to do is start doing the things that feed that and stop doing the things that don't. And that's true when it comes to both time and money. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, kind of along with that too, when you talk about looking at what you want your life to look at, and taking stock of where you're at with your finances, you also need to say, okay, what do my finances need to be to get from point A to point B? How do I reverse engineer that, right? Because a lot of people, when I first moved to Idaho, I had this goal. I was like, I want to stop making 6 figures a year. I don't need to make 6 figures a year, and I'm working my butt off to make 6 figures a year. But now that I'm moving to Idaho, I would rather have time. I mean, that never worked. I make 6 figures a year, but the idea was, if I'm going to make that, then I need to find what Michelle was saying. I need to find stuff that pays better, so I have more time in my life. And so really looking at that, and then also figuring out, okay, now I know what my values are. Now I want my life to look at that. Now let me look at my spending. Let me look at where I'm at with my money. Is that supporting that, right? Like,
Yeah.
I had a whole pile of knickknacks at one point, and I was like, well, I would like to travel. How come I don't have enough money to travel? And then I looked and I was like, oh, because I have all of these knickknacks that I don't care about. And so
there you go. Exactly.
When I started,
you're aligning with that. You're aligning your outsides with your insides.
Right. And so then when I started doing that, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I talked a lot about kind of, I think, more mindset related stuff, but in terms of the money, this is a slightly different like conversation, right? So to Miranda's point, where are you now? So for me, I'm always kind of, again, I work for myself now, so I'm always in this like constant evaluation phase. Like, how does my money help me to meet the goals that I have, or take care of the things I need to take care of? And with the money that I have now, how can I have the life that I want to live now? So what does that look like? So I do certain things to help like expand my income in ways that don't require me to work more. An example of this actually is I have a car share. So I participate in a car share. I'm obsessed with it. I am now a board member of this car share. I've been asked to be a board member. I am now a board member. And car share allows me to, the car share allows me to have access to a fleet of vehicles here in the state of Colorado. It's a nonprofit, by the way. These are hybrids. So one, I care about the earth. So I love that it's hybrid. It's cost friendly, that kind of thing. But it also saves me a significant amount of money each year because I don't have a car. Like, I don't need to have a car. I live by the light rail. I can walk, I can bike. But if I want to go to the mountains, I need a car. Like just to make my life easier, I need a car. So, so having this membership that I pay $13 a month gives me back thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that I don't have carrying costs for a car. I have a small property. So as we know right now, the big conversation is around housing affordability. And for some people that could be renting. For some people that could be, should we purchase? I was very fortunate to purchase years ago, but it's an awkward property. But when I bought it, I was like, well, it's in a really good neighborhood in town. And even though it's awkward, it suits my needs now. I didn't think I'd be living in it as long as I have been. But anyway, but because I bought this small property that suits my needs right now, even with the carrying costs, it's a significant savings to me while earning equity. And I will share candidly what my mortgage is, and you'll be like, no, because it's so funny. I pay $540 a month in my Denver, Colorado property in my mortgage.
That's cheap.
It's nothing. It is literally
this
nothing.
Listening to both of you women, Erin hasn't said much yet today, but
Erin,
listening to both you women reminds me of how different we all are and how important it is. One of the things, here's one of my favorite expressions. It's one of my favorites because I created it. Be aware of where you picture yourself, because ultimately that's where you're going to be. If you picture yourself, I pictured myself earning 7 figures, and I do. It took me a long time, but I did. I live in a house with no mortgage. And I give tons of money to charities, animal charities primarily. But anyway, the point is, I've thought of myself as this person for decades. And now I am this person. And I think often about what it is that makes me happy. And I try to surround myself with things that do. And I try to avoid things that don't. And often this isn't the same thing as what society says that I should be doing. And again, going back to what I just said, it's way different than what you women picture yourself. So the point really is, to me, is that everyone needs to do this, though. They need to picture themselves as where they really want to be. They need to examine their inner thoughts. They need to know what their values are. They need to picture where they want to be. And then ultimately, you don't even have to worry about where the money is going to come from, or where, if you just picture yourself in this spot, in this space, you will ultimately be there. And that's especially true if you surround yourself with people who can help you get there.
But Stacey, here's the thing. One, you don't know that I'm not picturing myself as a seven-figure earner.
Oh.
and two, it's very important to make the point that it's not a static thing, right? Like money is like a living being. It can go up and down. So right now everyone's chattering like, oh my God, there might be a recession. There's always a recession. I am over 30 years old. There's always a recession. And so it's like fascinating to me how these youngins are talking about how, oh my God, there might be a recession. I'm like, bro, there's going to be a recession. So you just have to prepare and figure out how you're going to be prepared for when it arrives. And it could be state-based, it could be nationally, or it could be both, right? And so for me, money is very much a living thing. My mindset around it, my actions around it. Sometimes I backslide a little bit. Like I'm one of those people who's always going to have to be constantly just checking in with myself about my mindset, especially as an entrepreneur. I notice that I have to constantly check in to make sure that I'm moving forward in the direction that I want to be moving forward in. Likewise, you're right. Like that vision of where I want to be. So my vision has really changed, not the financial piece, but the where has changed significantly. And so what that means and what actions that takes. I should also mention, like I was talking about the car and the housing, fun. So I spend a lot of time in the mountains. I love to travel. Obviously, during COVID, that didn't really happen. But when I travel, it's really interesting when I go to the mountains. There are a lot of like boutique hostels that I go to. Nice enough to be an Architectural Digest. So they're not shabby. And so what I did when I was like in super debt repayment mode, I still took vacations, but I would go and stay in a hostel, bougie, very nice view of Breckenridge, like really, really nice. But I just kind of approached things differently. So I still had the same outcome. I would be in a shared room. Then maybe for other days, I'd be in my own room to kind of balance out the cost. So I think there's just a lot of ways to do a thing and have a really fulfilling lifestyle. It just depends on what you're willing to do and how creative you want to be. Do I want to share rooms with people now in the same way? Not quite as much, but I still do. I don't need to. I like meeting the people. So it just depends on what's comfortable for you.
You're absolutely right. And you know what? We're almost out of time, guys. Let me ask everybody on the podcast today, what if you were going to give advice to a 22-year-old about how to live their best life, just a sentence or two, what would that be, Michelle?
I want to be last on this one, actually.
Okay, well, that's fine. I'll pick on Miranda. Miranda, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it starts by what we're talking about, like figuring out what you want your life to look like, evaluating whether what you're doing with your money and your time now is helping you get there. And if it's not, making changes in your life. So sometimes you have to tackle them small, right? Like paying down debt requires a debt pay down plan, paying, all of that kind of stuff. So sometimes you have to start small, building up like a travel fund, like how I have built up a travel fund, and done that using investments. Disclaimers, don't do it unless you have high risk tolerance, kids. But that took some time and small steps till it starts to snowball. So I think we're not talking about like just one day you wake up and you completely overhaul your life. That's not practical. But taking these small practical steps to change your money mindset and then also change how you're tackling your priorities, how you're making those small changes so that you can eventually get to where you see yourself.
Cool. Aaron, how about you?
I I think it's interesting as you're young, you think you have all the time in the world, and time seems to go really slow. So I don't know how you impress self-actualization at a young age. Not everybody has that. I think this conversation is really funny because it seems like a very 21st century advanced society conversation. 15,000 years ago, you're just waking up worrying about where you're going to eat today. And I think there's a lot of people in this world still probably doing that.
Good point.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's different for everybody, and it's hard to pinpoint what do you want out of life when I think everybody wakes up to it differently. And by the time you get old, what seemed to be forever, time goes even faster. So
hey, I'm living in dog minutes right now. Think time's going slow for me? Oh no.
Dang, Stacy.
Super fast. Okay, Michelle, lay it on me. Give me your best advice.
I think so. I think the one thing I would have done differently younger is study money more. I didn't have people telling me to study money and how it works, and the just to understand the skills needed to really be a good steward of my money. I was a great worker. Like a lot of people that who are bad with money are great workers, right? They show up, they give 115%. They're the first person there, the last person to leave. They're volunteering for extra things. That was me. But I didn't really have the financial management skill set because no one told me about it. And so part of me showing up on podcasts, having my own show, is to talk about that without judgment, because that wasn't talked about in my family. Even though there were people who owned homes in my family, they worked hard, they did all these things, but to have this conversation around money and money management wasn't that's to Aaron's point, that's very now, right? In the way that we're having it. So I think I would encourage anyone who's in their 20s now, study money. Don't let people shame you for your decisions. If you mess up, you'll find out and you'll have to learn from it. If you succeed, you'll find out, you'll learn from it. It's constantly evolving. As long as you're alive, you can make and you're well. If you're physically well, you can constantly make adjustments and so on and so forth. I think the other thing is focus on earning. I wish someone had, when I was just a little itty bitty, someone had sat there and been like, the biggest thing you could do is grow your income. This is the thing. And I feel like in personal finance spaces, we literally do not talk about this enough, how you can use the same skill sets and change the industry that you're in and just have a huge bump. So again, the person that I was referring to earlier, they doubled their income. Because they use the same skills, double their income. They are happy as a clam. And I wish someone had said something like that to me.
Yeah, that's good advice and something everyone should pay attention to. I wrote down a few little things. There are things that I've written before, but I mean, I would say think about what makes you happy and don't think about what society says should make you happy. Think about what really makes you happy. Be prepared to screw up. You will fail and be able to move past it. Because if you don't fail, then you're not trying hard enough. Be aware of who you associate with. Find people who can move you forward. Do not hang around people who are not taking you the direction that you want to go. And that's really important. And finally, I would say, don't compare yourself to other people. It's such a mistake. Facebook, I was on Facebook till about 2 years ago. And now I'm on it sometimes. And now I see what the problem is. You're watching everybody else have a great time. And boy, does that make you feel tiny. And what a dumb thing to do. Don't ever compare yourself with other people. Do what's right for you. Figure out what that is. And then align what you're doing on the outside with the way you're feeling on the inside. And you will be like me one day. You will be happy and you will be rich. That's what I would say.
And then post it on Facebook, all that you're doing, and then get wealthy. And make everybody else feel sad.
Yes. Do you love what you do? I do. That's why I'm not retired. I love what I do.
I love what I do, but now I run my own business, but I personally am very progressive. And so the way that I built my business leans into my personal beliefs. And I feel very in alignment in terms of how I live my life, how I serve people, what have you. You could be very conservative and do the same thing. It's just, I'm a much happier person. And I work a hell of a lot less, and it's fabulous.
Yeah, that's good. I agree with both those things. I also am progressive, and I also hardly work at all.
and it's great.
And you know what, guys? We are really out of time. In fact, we're over time. So there's my music. Okay. We are out of time, guys. We're never out of topic, though. You got to dig a little deeper. You got to find links to lots more info in our show notes. And remember, if your goal is to make more to spend less, to retire rich, like your Uncle Stacy, your online home is moneytalksnews.com. That's moneytalksnews.com. Also, visit Miranda, her online home. That's Miranda Marquit, MARQUIT.com. And of course, visit Michelle at her website. That is michelleismoneyhungry.com. Michelle, that's a great website name. If you got a question, comment, or topic you'd like to suggest, please tell us about it. Email us at hello@moneytalksnews.com. That's hello@moneytalksnews.com. And one last thing, if you appreciate what we do, then do something for us. Subscribe to this podcast. Takes you 2 seconds. Really helps us out, though. So if you like us, don't just sit there. Show us and subscribe. I'm Stacy Johnson.
And I'm Miranda Marquette.
And I'm Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Michelle Jackson.
Thanks for hanging out with us, folks. We'll see you right here next time.